Instant Rumor presents Chocolate Yoddah Live.
Hi folks, Chocolate Yoddah here, spelled Y-O-D-D-A-H, because film studios are litigious. This is another installment of Chocolate Yoddah Live. Today is Friday, June 9th, 2023. Wow, what a week it's been. This is the last episode of the first week of Chocolate Yoddah Live, and interesting stuff is happening. As a matter of fact, right before I flipped the switch on the podcast, I was listening to both David Pakman and Brian Cohen talk about some stuff, and I'll get to that in a moment. But so this has been an interesting week. I got a hint at just how stupid people are in America. Now, of course, these are microcosmic examples and they don't necessarily prove anything, but this has been sort of an ongoing thing here where people are just anti-science, anti-knowledge, blissfully ignorant. So I told you earlier in the week that I encountered a woman who I refer to as a mullet come to life, and how she was claiming that climate change ain't real. All right. So we've heard that before. Not necessarily novel or surprising. We know they're out there. Yesterday, I encountered a woman who actually surprised me by how outrageously ignorant she seemed to be. So she got in my car. As I've mentioned before, I drive rideshare in order to pay the bills, and she asked me if I had heard anything about the fires in Canada. I let her know that I had not updated myself on that. I did note that the air quality seems to be getting better in the Northeast. So, you know, the Earth is doing what it does. It's just moving things along and filtering things out. And so, you know, we got to talking. I did make mention of the fact that I found it surprising that when people heard that air quality was low, suddenly they broke out masks again. And I found that somewhat ironic. Like, you know, the same scientists essentially that are telling you that the air quality is low also told you that there was a pandemic and you didn't pay attention to that. Because I haven't seen masks on people in a while now. Like, sporadically, I see them. You know, I'll go into my bank and some of them are still wearing masks, and they're behind a glass at the bank. They're not, you know, fully exposing themselves to people at this point. Once in a while, I'll enter a retail establishment and I'll see one or two other people other than myself wearing a mask. But it's been rare. It's been few and far between. And suddenly, there's a resurgence in people wearing masks. I mean, it's not like it just exploded in terms of usage, but I saw a lot more people in masks for the past few days than I have in the past few months. And we got to talking, and, you know, when I mentioned that thing about, you know, the same scientists telling us that the air quality was low, I mentioned that, you know, during the pandemic, I kept it simple. I just ignored what the talking heads were saying, and it didn't matter to me whether they were right, left, center. It doesn't matter. If they were talking heads on television, I was ignoring them in favor of listening to the health experts. You know, like in the case of climate change, I don't want to hear from anybody except climate scientists. And 97% of those people agree that there's a problem and that human beings are causing it. So I'm convinced 97% agreement in science is extremely rare. So I'm convinced that they're telling me the truth. They're giving me accurate information. And then I mentioned, with regard to the pandemic, the person that I listened to the most was Dr. Fauci. And this is where the train derailed, went off the side of the mountain, crashed, and burst into flames. This woman said something that I never would have expected for an adult person living in America since 2020. And that is, who's Dr. Fauci? A what? She really asked me that. And this was not a young woman. This was a black woman. I suspect she still is today. And she was, I assumed, she had a mask on, so I couldn't really assess her age, but it seemed like she was probably in her 40s, maybe late 40s, early 50s, but I'll say 40s. So how does a person in their 40s who's been alive for the past 3 years, well, at this point, 3.5 years, and not know who Anthony Fauci is? Because that was the thing. I don't know. I thought her brain glitched for a second, so I was like, Anthony Fauci. And she was like, she didn't know who I meant. So I said, oh yeah, he's been the lead doctor in America for the last 50 years. And this is what she concluded this part of the conversation with: I'll have to look him up. Oh yeah, that really happened. I'll have to look up the most famous doctor in the world currently. But, maybe it's just an indication of idiocracy, right? Idiocracy was released, I don't remember exactly what year, maybe 2012, around there, something like that. But, it was set 500 years in the future, and sort of extrapolating or projecting the current state of intelligence. The makers of that film assumed that people were just going to continue to get dumber. And I think continue is the right word, because for the first time in 150 years, IQ scores have gone down. So maybe it's happening. Maybe people are getting dumber. I mean, my casual observation suggests very strongly that they are. But I haven't done research on that, and neither of you. If you went to a web page or 2 or 3, you have not done research. You just did a search. That's a word that I'm getting annoyed by when people use it. Do your own research. Oh yeah, you're going to collect large data sets, analyze them, collate the information, test the information. No. You went to imright.com, as Bill Burr would say, and, found something that agrees with what you said. But again, I think a cursory search through research papers and reports on test scores and things like that, and, the average man on the street interview, they all suggest to me that people are getting dumber. I hope not, but the fact is this: not every species lasts forever. My understanding is roughly 92% of all species that have ever existed on Earth have disappeared. And that had nothing to do with human intervention or interference. It's just something that happens. He said, listen, I'm thinking a thought and jumping to the middle of it. George Carlin once said, I think in his Jammin' in New York special, the first live HBO special he ever did, that humans were possibly a biological cul-de-sac. Just love that wording. They're a dead end. We might not be going anywhere. We might be ending. Who knows? But would have actually been interesting to hear Carlin talk about what's going on now. But as I mentioned earlier, I was listening to David Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen, and Pakman was talking about Ron Dekrampus. I'll tell you, this guy, I don't think I've ever seen a star burn out as quickly for someone who announced a run for presidency. This was only 2 weeks ago that he decided, beyond all logic that I can comprehend, to go on an audio-only platform with a megalomaniac that's even worse than he is, Elon Musk, and have this outrageously glitchy session where he announced his run for presidency. That was 2 weeks ago, and his campaign seemingly has already crashed and burned. Why do I say that? Because his approval rating is now, hold on to your hats, minus 19 points. Oh, that's priceless. It's fitting, though. The man is an idiot. And I don't mean he's not intelligent necessarily, right? I don't think you can be governor of a state without being intelligent. I mean, the governor of a state is the president of that state, right? So, and governors tend to actually have to get things done, although Florida is sort of like in the middle of everything. Their COVID response was sort of in the middle of the pack. They were like in the 20s. Their education, their economy, it's everything about Florida is very mediocre. But that's not terrible, right? So at least they're mediocre. And so Dekrampus is, the head of that mediocrity, right? And, so when I say he's an idiot, I think that with regard to his ambition to be president of America, he's just not good. He's making terrible decisions. Not the least of which was his idea to wage a war on woke. I mean, how do you decide that that's going to be, with everything going on, like the number one killer of children right now is not woke, it's not books, it's not transvestites reading to them, it's guns, right? It used to be car accidents. Car accidents for the longest time were the number one way that people 19 and under died. Now it's guns. The economy is actually getting better, but still needs improvement. There's a lot of social issues that are relevant to everyday life in America that would go on the list of things to address as a president. And he announced just a few days ago, I think it was earlier this week, that he was waging a war on woke. That's idiotic, right? That's idiotic. So, his only selling point was saying, I could do 2 terms. So technically he is correct. If Dump got reelected, which I don't see the math in that right now, but, it's still early. But if Dump got reelected, he could only do 1 term. So yes, Dekrampus could do 2 terms, and he's setting the stage for embracing that idea by suggesting very clearly that it will take 2 terms to right the disaster that's going on in America now. And that's not my words, that's his. You know, he's painting a bleak picture because that's what the Republicans do. They won't tell you that Joe Biden, who a person I don't like, I've never liked him as a politician. I think he's made terrible choices in the past, but because I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I can look at things independently and do my best to be unbiased. I obviously can't literally be unbiased, but I can do my best to be as unbiased as possible. And the fact is that Biden has passed more legislation in 2 years than President Obama did in 8 years. That's just a fact. And what I love about the legislation is that it's mostly focused on issues that are important to people living in America. Because frankly, I think that's what the measurement of any good country is. Does the leadership care about the citizens? You know, and it's all about, you know, how do you decide that? How do you figure out which country cares about their people and which ones don't? Look at their legislation. Look at the decisions that they make on behalf of the people that they represent, either in reality or ostensibly. I think in the case of America, it's ostensible because I don't see any real correlation between what Americans say they want in massive numbers. You know, if you look at that Venn diagram of what Americans want on all spectrums of politics, they basically want the same things. Like right now, gay marriage is polling higher than it's ever been in the 70s. I believe it's either 70 or 70 something percent. I forget exactly, but it's never been this popular in America. So people are saying, hey, we're cool with gay marriage. You know, I heard a comedian once say that unless 2 gay men need for me to be in the middle of them in order for them to have sex, I won't concern myself with their sex lives. I feel the same way. I don't care. Never have, never will. Like, hey, whatever brings you orgasms, have at it. Good for you. But, you know, that's one of those things where, you know, you have these people that are supposed to be representing America against these things. And it's like, well, you're not actually representing what Americans say they're thinking, what their desires and wants are, what their problems are. You know, there's great agreement in the area of gun control. You know, this is one of those things where it baffles me that Republicans love Ronald Reagan. He did so many things that they hate. And I know I'm jumping around, but that's how my mind works. I think the caffeine is kicking in. Ronald Reagan enacted gun control laws. Of course, he did that when black people scared him to death in 1968. When they showed up to government buildings with rifles, he was like, I guess we got to do some gun laws, you know? And he did. I believe he was governor at the time. So the other things that he did, what else did he do that they hate now? Oh, he negotiated with terrorists, which was Iran-Contra. And by the way, the Iran-Contra thing kind of made him the biggest drug dealer in America, in American history, actually. But that's a story for another time. So he negotiated with terror. Oh, he gave amnesty to over 3 million illegal aliens, so to speak, right? Illegal immigrants. He raised taxes. 7 of his 8 years. His first year, he cut taxes and exploded the deficit. 300% increase at the time. And I believe at the time that was the largest increase ever. So he did all these things, you know, raise taxes, this whole list of things that people hate, and they still love him. But again, so people agree, gun control, good. Gay marriage, fine. Let people choose which books they're going to read. The books that are in schools because people with education degrees decided that they should be in schools. They study education, they study children, they know at what age you can introduce certain ideas. And is that a perfect system? No. But it's a system that I think is reasonable. I might not agree with every decision they make. I haven't looked at that in a long time. I don't even know what the curriculum is, but I know that, books expanded my thinking. And I'm sure a lot of the books that expanded my thinking, these people, these very small-minded, terrified people, would say that those are bad books, that children shouldn't read them. But I say let educators do the educating, right? And again, most Americans agree with that. So right down the line, when you are looking at how other countries handle these things, you can see whether they're creating an environment in their country where their citizens can thrive, right? Like you look at the happiness index, you look at the opportunity index, all these indicators, what's the economy doing? Are people upwardly mobile? Like in America, we have a generation who for the first time in American history is going to make less money than the previous generation. That's not good. And that's a result of Ronnie Reagan's ideas, the trickle-down nonsense, what George Bush the Elder once referred to as voodoo economics, because there was nothing there. It was all magic. And I believe trickle-down was not even conceived of by economists. I believe it was just politicians that thought that up. As that was their way to justify putting more money in their wealthy friends' hands. So you look at other countries, you look at things like who's banning Monsanto, right? Not America, And I'm not referring to GMOs. GMOs are actually a good thing, but the other chemicals that Monsanto's involved in. And by the way, if you don't think GMOs are a good thing, there are like 2 billion people still alive because of GMOs, because it increases the harvest and all that kind of stuff. So GMOs help to feed more people. So I'm going to put that in the win column. But yeah, all these other horrible chemicals that, disrupt life on Earth, that's why there's a long list of countries that have banned Monsanto in their country to protect their citizens. America's not protecting their citizens. I mean, back in 2012, we had the Sandy Hook incident. 20 children, ages 6 and 7, were murdered along with a few adults. And the people who are in charge with making laws and protecting us said, there's nothing we can do but think and pray, which is, of course, redundant. Once you say there's nothing you can do, if you say I'm going to send thoughts and prayers, you're saying there's nothing you can do. We don't need imaginary solutions. We need real solutions. But the gun lobby has bought a lot of politicians, so nothing's going to get done about that. People will continue to be slaughtered because American politicians don't care about Americans. I mean, what other conclusion can there be? They don't care. They don't care. If they cared, they'd do something about it. In 1996 in Australia, the Port Arthur massacre happened. And for the longest time, that was the largest mass shooting in world history. What'd they do the next day? Enough with guns. They actually confiscated 600,000 guns. That's a lot in a country that size. Because they wanted to protect their citizens. They cared about the safety and well-being of their citizens. I mean, what other way is there to look at it? If you're constantly passing laws that hurt the average person, like think about the average American right now, and I'm solidly in that group. Okay, for a while I was kind of living above average, not anymore. That ended a couple years ago. It ended actually 3 years ago, and I started to feel it a year ago. Like I'm living hand to mouth, like everybody else is. You know, the average American cannot withstand an emergency greater than $400. Most Americans are 2 weeks away from being homeless at all times. And all it takes, what's the number one way people get homeless? Medical issues. You get in an accident, or you get sick and now you're hospitalized, or you can't work, you can lose everything. What kind of society allows that? So, anyway, Dekrampus, down 19 points in approval rating, and I just don't see a way clear for him. But I hope he hangs into the race for a long time because he's a disruptor. All of the people that are challenging Dump are essentially a clown car. You know, it's the only one, and this is kind of an indication of how bad the Republican field is right now. The one that looks the best is Christie. I don't know if you saw his town hall. This is an impressive man. And he becomes even more impressive compared to the other clowns in the car. You know, the Nikki Haley, and that one dude is a black Republican, which I don't even understand those. But again, that's a story for another time as well. But all the people running right now, you know, Pence is about to announce. And Pence is as exciting as room temperature milk. Like there's nothing to that guy. You know, he won't condemn Donnie Dump for, you know, sicking his cult on him. I mean, let's remember, on January 6th, these people were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." They wanted to murder this man. And he can't find it in his heart to say anything other than, I think Trump was wrong about that, you know. Come on, dude. I'd be screaming into the camera, I'm gonna kill them. But yeah, so I mean, it's just such a weak field. And I have to say, you know, I wouldn't have a problem voting for Christie. You know, he is actually a reasonable sounding person. He happens to be a good debater, and he admitted to a mistake in his town hall, which is kind of brilliant, I think. You know, like Dump never admits to being wrong or making a mistake or anything like that. Anything but the best, yeah, I'm the best. But, you know, Christie said that his mistake was ignoring Dump. He thought he was a clown. He thought he was ridiculous. He thought everybody would see right through his lies. And he realizes that he was wrong about that. And now he's going after him. When people ask him about Dump, like Dump said that who would he pardon? I forget. He famously said he would pardon somebody, or someone said they would pardon Dump. Oh yeah, Dekrampus said that he would pardon Dump if he were elected. And someone asked Christie, "Would you pardon Dump if you were elected?" And he was like, "No, of course not." You know, Christie was a prosecutor, so he said, "Hey, if you got a fair trial with a jury of your peers and they decided that the evidence clearly demonstrated that you were guilty, there's no reason to pardon that person." That's a definitive, strong answer. And it's the type of answer that none of the other candidates or either the ones that have already announced or the ones that we assume are going to announce have been willing to make. No one's been willing to make the definitive statement. Is Donnie Dump a bad guy? Was he a bad president? Which of course he was. And this isn't just because I don't like him as a person and haven't liked him for decades. You know, if you're a New Yorker, you knew what an idiot what a narcissistic plague that guy was. You knew this, right? So when he came down the golden escalator and announced and put down Mexicans and Muslims and terrorists and, basically began the new wave of racial violence, we knew he was a piece of garbage. But because he was on The Apprentice and because Americans love celebrities, actually worship celebrities, he got in. So there it is. So Chris Christie is the most reasonable Republican candidate at this point. That's a phrase I never thought I'd say. So there you have it. And as I mentioned earlier, I really do wish that Carlin was still around for a variety of reasons. I mean, not the least of which, and possibly the most important reason, is that he was my hero. What was his birthday just passed May 12th. And, I've never seen anything like what's going on now in politics. And he spoke about politics extensively, so I'm sure his take would have been blistering. But, he's gone, so I'll just fire up YouTube and check him out at my leisure. So I don't know, this is it. This was the first week of Chocolate Yoddah Live. And I don't know, maybe Fridays I'll do a roundup show. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know why I'm doing this except just to do it. Why not? I figure that my podcasts, at the very least, are going to be the equivalent of cave drawings. Just a way of saying, I was here. Good, bad, or indifferent, whatever that means to whomever. It's, I was here. Here are my drawings. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks for joining me. Peace, love, and granola. Talk to you soon.